All right, Gary, to continue. This is really the more important part. This is a part I'd really like to be able to communicate on. And don't consider our agreements politically incidental. Those are practical things. Those are more important than how we explain there. Because imagine that if all the words are redefined a little bit, they might all fit together. We might have the same impulse. That's the real reason why. I mean, let's face it. The real reason we want to do good for save a kitten. You might go down the street. I hate kittens and they're killers and oh my god. But then you see a little helpless abandoned kitten and you save it. It's like, why do we really do this? It's not a logical argument. It's because we feel a compassion. And we might have thought it through, and we might even have learned that we wanted to be compassionate when at one point we weren't, and seem to have changed. But really, it comes down to the fact that just think it's fair to have this. So even if it's gray text, it's not incidental agreement. Those need to be really valued. When you seem to come to something from a totally different angle, but you still agree on this thing, you should really value those. And you never really know if there is a different angle. A lot of the different angle is just different interpretations, and based down in someone's character, the real reason. Their mom taught them to be polite, or they never liked people that were impolite, so they're polite. The real reason might just be the same, and also it doesn't really matter if it's the same. If you have the social sphere of politics is where we're going to agree to sort of breach some of the rules and tell each other what to do and stuff, where in principle we don't want to do that. So if you agree with somebody, that's special, it should be valued a little, but I know what you mean, that sometimes it can be incidental. And so, I leave that to you. That's actually not the part that I want to say is the real important part that I would like to communicate with you on, and realize that this is more than incidental and more than unimportant. Here's the thing. Remember, you were talking about me as being pro the DNA, like telling him we'll just be for the urges. Let me just say, for the sake of argument, okay, yes, I'm saying that. To a certain degree, give in to the urges. It's the toolkit you've got. But I believe the intellect can weigh the urges. So you can have a very strong urge of one sort and say, no, that's not actually important right now. And though the other urge is subtle, you can increase its weight and say, well, that's more important. And why can you do this? To allow you to work in time. And this is this whole idea of, you live in the now. No, what you do is you control whether the now is narrow or big. What does the now? So, for example, you could have a really strong urge of hunger, and you can discount that because you can say, listen, I need to go do this other thing, and I will eat later. And so this other thing that is, in terms of your gut feelings, is not as intense. You can make that more important. Okay. Considering that, this is why I say there are intellectual feelings. Like, for example, the feeling of, I don't know what to call it, but eureka. It's like, oh my God, I've got it. I'm working on a puzzle. I'm wondering what the crossword word is. Oh, this is it. That feeling. That's a feeling too. And we're addicted to that just like we're addicted to the orgasms. So when you say to me, well, Piero, you think that you have an orgasm, it feels good, and so it is good. No, not exactly. Because I'm selecting among all of these feelings, and there are intellectual feelings. Now, while Eureka is really up there, I love it, I also have a few complaints about it, and there are hangovers from it. I would put above that my number one feeling is a tranquility connection with everything around me. I've only ever really had it, or let me say the most pure forms I've had have always been in nature. You're out in nature, generally alone, and the wind is blowing and the leaves are making their sounds, and there's a bird flies right across, and there's sorts of is a feeling of synchronicity, and as you look at the world around you, it all seems to be flowing together. Everything is integrated. Everything is integrated in a whole, and all the parts are whole parts, and they make up a whole. Now, I know my brain is putting that into all these sensory information. I mean, I got a little bit of, green information on a little spot that knows how to be a green sensor, and yet I feel that it's all connected. Yes, So I know my brain is putting on there, but I also know that this thought my brain is having is generated by the senses and real things going on around me. And when I feel very connected like this and everything seems to work together, that's my number one feeling. That's what I'm going for. I want that feeling as much as I can. Now, would I want it all the time? No, I think I'd be blissed out. That's a part of my skepticism and relativism. You don't ever really maximize anything. But in terms of feelings that I think are positive, that I'm going after, it's not orgasm. Orgasm's in the middle, maybe the high middle. Sometimes, it can be this. It can get way high. It can be ramped up. That's if you're not getting enough. It can be ramped way up artificially high. You can still do that down, like maybe the few percent of priests that really have suppressed their sexual urges as opposed to just kind of asexual to begin with or whatever. Those that have really controlled it, I don't know if that's ever happened. But anyway, to some degree, you lose control, right, of doing the weighing. The reptile and ape mind can overcome it. According to some philosophers, thank God for that, we wouldn't have survived. I was just reading some, I think it was, I don't remember, Beyond Good and Evil, or no, probably, maybe, Genealogy of Morals, maybe was it. And he was talking about that, and this is from someone who valued this logic, right? He really had a lot of bad things to say about these ape and what you call the ape and reptile natures. But he also said that we probably wouldn't have survived if the ape nature wasn't willing. It's like, what is breaking? Okay, Christianity is part of the intellectual nature. Sure, it's corrupted by all sorts of feelings, but that's the point. It's part of the intellectual nature and tried to lock itself in. And really, it's the ape nature of the urge of not wanting to be caged. There's positive things. It's a little brutal and stuff, but it's like brass tacks, this is the way it's going to be. And the fight for freedom, I don't know, intellectually, I think people might be more inclined to be to give in to slavery, and that's why we saw slavery. And that's the thing I want to talk about. It's like, I don't know what you were really saying about the pyramids, but we don't waste money on pyramids anymore. It's kind of sad we don't build these giant marble structures anymore, but we don't. We don't. And there's a reason that's related to an era where, everybody has more of the luxuries or kind of semi-necessa luxuries, like cell phones. Not really a necessity, but it becomes sort of, really useful. And we're spreading this kind of technology out further. It's probably related to the fact that we don't build huge cathedrals to one man or to a generation of men at the slavery of other people. On the other hand, I think we should recreate some of that. I wish we were doing big projects like that together, because the other way to look at those things is, as employment projects. If you don't do it with slaves and stuff, it's like, yeah, it's nice to make a monument or better yet, a library that's a useful and also, this architecture of something monumental. I have no idea why I wrote army, self, whatever. So I think what we need to work on to get free. See, my approach to social problems is not at all on this survival part. To me, this is a natural philosophy discussion. My approach to, but I like if you've used analytic philosophy to get to to social things. But basically, to me, the social problems are all an analysis of slavery awareness. There's habits that slaves get into that even once you're freed, you can still be into. Plus, there's the issue of the master is a kind of slave. He's the most privileged slave, but he's still enslaved to that process as much as anybody else, which is why you see owners become ruthless, even ones that were benevolent as much as they could be before, because when the shit hits the fan, they've got to look out for themselves, because they are a slave to the system. Their very survival relies on it. There's no two doubt about it. For them to survive as they understand it, survival as they know it. So anyway, thanks. I think this was a very productive thing. I liked a lot of the things you said I'll use and remember. The structure versus structure as agenda. Good point. Reproduction instead of survival as the DNA's quote unquote agenda at that point. Yeah, very interesting stuff. As fruitful for future discussion with each other and just